Let's just go ahead and say we'll start now, man. Yeah. Welcome to the podcast, Joe. Thanks for coming. So, first thing I want to ask you about, man, is this last fight you had, and like kind of the story of overcoming the injury of your bicep. So let's take it back to the bicep. What happened with that?
So I was sparring. I was getting ready I was gonna go down to New Jersey. February, I think 2nd was the fight date. And I was sparring, getting ready for that. And through that hook, I threw a 3-2, and then when that hook landed in the first round of sparring, I just heard that pop, and then just a jolt of pain shot down my arm, and then just I couldn't feel it anymore. It was numb for a second, and then and I knew something was wrong.
When the hook landed is when it popped off.
Yeah, right when it landed. It was like kind of like one of those leaping lead hooks. It was like boom, but when you watch it, I landed it like that, so it was a good land, and it just popped my bicep.
Did it come all the way up?
Not all the way. It was like it ends right here, but it was like up here.
Okay. Yeah, you see that happened to Miguel Cotto in his last fight, his retirement fight. Saddam Ali, he fought. Yeah, in the fight, it popped up, and he finished the fight. But you look at the post-fight, he's got that fucked up looking bicep.
Yeah. I mean, you can still, I was still using it up until surgery. I was still doing push-ups.
Oh, no shit.
I wasn't throwing punches, but I was doing push-ups and, holding the ball, doing my squats and my lunges and stuff and running and all that stuff. So it's still kind of functional.
So you injured it. How long did you wait till surgery?
It was about 4 or 5 weeks, I think they got me in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty quick. It's an injury that they don't want to wait on. So.
Right.
Yeah, pretty quick. So I injured it January, I want to say mid-January, and I had surgery March 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the recovery like then post-surgery? Because I'm going through this shoulder recovery, so I'm kind of familiar with it. So what did you have to go through?
So the post-surgery was just, I was in a splint they said I'd be in a splint for 2 weeks, but I was only in a splint for 11 days. And my post-surgery appointment 11 days after surgery. And that's when they took it all off. And then I was able to kind of, they kind of stretched me out a little bit. But after that, I just continued to wear the splint for a little bit just for comfortability. But I stopped wearing that because it just made me stiff. But I was able to start stretching it out, after I got the splint off. Stretching it out like that. So it was, and then I think they wanted me to wait 8 weeks until I did anything with physical therapy.
Yeah.
And I think it was a 12 to 16 weeks before I was supposed to be at full, you can do whatever you can do.
Right. It's similar with the shoulder, yeah.
Yeah.
It was 6 weeks in the sling, and it got to the point where it was my arm's pretty much locked up. I can't move it.
Right.
But, you don't want to re-injure it, you know what I'm saying? So at what point did you feel comfortable throwing that hook again?
Throwing? I don't know. I was training southpaw.
Yeah, I talked to JC about that because in your last fight, I saw you switch to southpaw a couple of times. And after the fight, I bumped into JC in the hallway, and I said, "Hey, what's up with the southpaw?" And he's like, "Oh, I like it when he sticks to orthodox. He's kind of old school."
Yeah. So I was, I think I started throwing punches with it probably around the 3-month mark. I think I started, but it was real light, left hands as a southpaw, and then I'd go around and throwing hooks on the bag still bothers me sometimes, and then throwing uppercuts on mids in the bag and stuff that still bothers me sometimes too.
Okay.
So it's kind of always lingering, but I think around 4 months is when I started training hard again, but kind of babying it a little bit, because I didn't want to do anything to it.
Yeah, it's an important part of the sport. I always tell people it takes a lot to be a boxer. It's more than just punching. And some of these more complicated aspects, we have to be rugged, right? We have to be, tough enough to take the damage and recover and continue. And sometimes it's hard to be patient and let yourself heal. You know what I'm saying? You want to just get right back to it. But a very important part of the process is to let yourself heal. But you got right back in and fought how many months after 6 months total?
8 months.
8 months. Okay, so that's pretty long layoff.
Yeah.
But not too bad considering some people take longer layoffs when they're 100% healthy. So got to commend you for getting back in there.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I was there at the fight. And it was cool. It was a good comeback. I thought you handled it. I thought there's a few moments where you're going to get him out of there. But that guy was tough. He hung on. So I was reviewing your box rec, and not everybody's is correct. You know if your box rec is correct online?
It is.
I got all your fights there. It's 5-1-1.
5-1-1.
5-1-1. Yeah, I was taking a look at. You've had I'd say some pretty brave matchmaking on your career. That's very commendable because you know how modern boxing is, and even the best guys get criticized for taking easier fights in the beginning of your career. But you've only fought one guy with a upside down record. Everybody else had winning records, and one guy had an even record. But only one guy with a losing record. That's pretty impressive. Do you handle your own management? Does JC run things behind the scenes? How does that work?
So I run everything. I do all the management, I guess you would say. I reach out to matchmakers. Matchmakers reach out to me, and then I do my homework on who I'm fighting. I go, take it to JC and Jermaine. Then I tell them like this is what it is. I already studied them. Here's a couple clips I found. You can study them, and then blah blah, and then it's just like yeah, well he's beatable. Let's go get in shape. Let's go get him.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, with me doing my matchmaking and me coming in the game at 21, I don't have all that people to be able to. I have to take these fights because I'm,
Yeah,
if I'm not taking these fights, I'm not going to get fights.
But I think you're doing the right thing because a lot of guys, especially in Oregon, we got a lot of guys that stay amateur for a long time, or maybe they're just starting the sport late, and yeah, they're in their later 20s, early 30s trying to get a career started. You don't have time to cherry pick. You don't have time to move like you're some kid who's been groomed, like a Haney or somebody.
Right.
They built that kid in a laboratory of boxing, and his whole career since he was 10 years old has been mapped out. And you can't even add up the millions of dollars that's been invested into his career, So we can't compare ourselves to those guys in the professional ranks here, especially in the Northwest, But you can see some guys, they travel to fight, they take, they're trying to pick and choose, But I think the path you're on now is going to put you, like, say, a potential fight coming on DAZN, right? And that just comes off of, well, when these matchmakers are looking at you, say, okay, this he's ready to risk it. He's ready to risk his record. You've got a loss already, which is in a way is good for you. Get that out of the way.
Right.
Don't worry about the perfect record.
Right.
Plenty of fighters have lost. And they become like a people's boxer. Think of like a Gabe Rosado or somebody like that. These guys have losses, but they lose in great fights. They put on great performances. You had that crowd going crazy at the Armory.
That was amazing, man.
Yeah, I felt like it was your show.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I thought you stole the show from whoever the headliner was. So, and that comes off one of my notes I wrote down is, I've known you off and on for years. I think we even sparred once back in the day. And that's kind of how our boxing community is. We all kind of know each other. You probably sparred most of the guys fought some of the guys that you see around. But I recall that something I always remembered about you is this kind of like your family and like community, and you've always kind of gathered people around you and your team, right? And you saw it reflected in the fight, So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about your family. Tell me about what's going on when you're not throwing punches.
So my family, I got my wife, Cora Aguilar, we can call that now. And I got my two boys, Jane and Elijah, 7 and 4.
Yeah.
And having Jaden at 21 is why I came back to boxing. I was kind of like messing around with it back in the day, but at 21 I had Jaden, and then that's when I was like, all right, let me come back to boxing and really give it, I was like, it's already kind of late in the sport for me, but let me just give everything I got and just ride with it. And then also with the process of doing that was, I'm not going to have my son sit here and watch me just work.
Sure.
A regular job.
Yeah.
I'm gonna teach him that if you want something, you gotta get it. You gotta work hard for it. And so, just that itself is just, I like to say I was made to be a dad. I love being a dad. And leading by example is like the biggest thing anybody can do these days, because there's some coaches out there too that and you be like, you bond more with people who have actually been there and done what you try to do, or actually like been in a fight. You know what I mean? So lead by example. It's a lot. I can show you better than I can tell you type of thing.
Yeah, that's a lot of parenting. I got my son's 11, and similar when he was born. I was like, I got to change my life up. I started taking boxing seriously, and it became, this obsession that turned into a career that turned into this, So kids are powerful, man.
Yeah.
And like I noticed you had your kids at the fight. Like
I'm my oldest.
yeah, yeah. And, how do you feel about fighting in front of him?
Um, I don't mind it at all, man, because it's not something that I'm hiding. I'm a fighter, so it's like they're gonna see their dad fight, and they've been watching me fight and spar since they were little. So I don't think it's too much, and they love it.
Yeah,
Like my son was begging me to come in and fight.
that's good.
It's like, did you find out if I can go yet? Did you find out if I can go yet? So he was begging me to go fight.
That's great, man. So probably felt good to win, obviously, and have him there. Was it the first time you've been in a fight? Because you fought on the road quite a bit.
It's the first professional fight he's been to.
Okay.
Like, he's been to some. He was at some of my amateurs. He probably doesn't remember because he was a lot younger.
Yeah.
But he's been to some of my amateurs, but that was his first professional fight.
So you're 5-1-1 as a pro. You didn't have a ton of amateur fights, did you?
I only had 20.
20. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's not. I mean, did you fight at light heavyweight or super middleweight?
Fought super heavyweight, and then I fought light heavyweight.
Right. So your boxing career has watched your weight decline as your experience goes up, right? That's good. Yeah. So now you're fighting at super middleweight, 168 as a pro. Okay. You ever going back to heavyweight?
Not heavyweight. Maybe when I retire.
Yeah.
Get a little bodybuilder or something.
Yeah. Speaking of heavyweights, our guy Ark, he got the KO down there in Mexico. It's another guy who we've seen transition from amateurs to pros, and an older guy with the family. I mean, there's a lot of that here in Oregon. I think it bonds a lot of us together because we have similar stories, and we're fighting for similar reasons,
Right, exactly. Yeah, Art, he's a good guy, man. I like Art a lot.
Yeah.
And I love sparring with him too and being in the ring because he's just so big and strong and he's quick.
Yeah, it's explosive.
Get that experience a lot of places.
I know you always want to spar up.
Yeah.
You don't want to spar down. But that's good, man. So, who's your head coach? Is it JC?
JC's the head coach.
How long you been working with him?
I think JC came in. I had my third fight and got a stoppage, and then I think that's after I started fighting and training with JC. He was at the gym for a little bit, and then kind of just getting familiar as a brand.
Yeah.
And I had my fight, and he was there, and then afterwards we were just like, if you want to train me, you got to train me, blah blah. And since then, it's just let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I like him a lot. I like his style. He's kind of a throwback coach. Doesn't do anything flashy. Keeps, as far as I can tell, he keeps it real simple. And those fundamentals really do get you far. Perfecting the fundamentals, just being a good, solid fighter. Now, before we wrap things up here, why don't you tell me about what's coming up next for your career?
So I have a contract for January 25th in Toppenish, rematch with the dude that I lost to over in Toppenish.
Okay. Now I checked the boxer. He hasn't fought since you fought him.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah. What's that about?
I don't know. See, they asked me. So when I fought in Toppenish for the second time in September, when I fought Billy Drywater,
I watched that fight on TV.
Yeah, they asked me to do a rematch with Alvarez Reynolds, who I lost to.
Okay.
And I said yeah, but I guess he didn't want to.
So they brought in Billy.
Yeah.
Now that guy, I remember he's about my age. And I was like, here's one for the old guys. He's like 36, 38 maybe. He had a punch, dude. That guy had a punch.
He did.
Most of us old guys, we got a punch, but he didn't have legs, And you took care of him. You KO'd him, didn't you?
He retired in his corner round.
That's right.
Second round knockdown, and then I tried to get him out of there, but the ref wasn't letting me.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. It's okay to quit on your stool. No shame in that because he wasn't coming out of that fight on 2 feet. He was coming out on his back. So, but yeah. So again, you're rematching this guy up there, and when's that going down?
January 25th.
Okay, so.
But that's I'm also in talks with the DAZN one, which will be February 2nd.
So you got to choose.
Yeah, so I got to choose. I already got the contract for the 25th one. The DAZN one is the one that I really want the most, but they haven't really got back to me with any numbers or if it's like a for sure thing or whatnot.
Right.
But
yeah, I always say it's never sure until the first bell rings. When it comes to matchmaking, and I work in as an assistant with Lorenzo Caldera. My role in that camp is I hold the mitts, I help with the game plan, I work as a cut man. I don't do the matchmaking, but I review the potential fighters and I do some film study and stuff. And I don't know how many times I've done film study on a guy, only to find out after 2 weeks later, oh, it's not going to be that guy, it's going to be somebody else. I'm like, man, you put all this work behind the scenes, and then One time we fought in Mexico. We're driving to the airport in the car, and we get a call. Hey, the opponent dropped out. How about this guy? And they switch the opponents on us while we're on the way to the airport. You know, and you're like, what are you going to do? Cancel the whole thing? You know?
Right. So we'll be there.
And we'll be there. We went down there and took care of business. But that was a tough fighter, man.
Yeah.
And some of those guys down in Mexico, they don't got great records, but they got records. They got lots of fights, lots of experience. You know, that's a real valuable thing in the sport of boxing. Whether you're winning or losing, you're in the ring.
Right.
And these guys, they don't get knocked out. They don't get, drug out in the ambulance. These guys are fighting to the last bell.
Right.
And some of them are real crafty with the head, the cabeza coming up and under. Oftentimes these guys, when you go for a punch, they'll dip their head defensively, so you strike them on the top of the head. I've worked down there 4 times now with a few different fighters, Caldera, Cruz, and Coa Gabriel that one time. All of them came out, except for Gabriel, because he got the guy out of there in the first 18 seconds. They all came out with busted up knuckles, because these dudes just put their head down and take the shots up on the dome. These are some of the savvy tricks that people don't understand. And in the sport of boxing, it's a lot more than throwing punches. There's a lot of little tactics and tricks to win fights or manipulate your opponent or hurt your opponent. And if you're not really preparing for that, you could be getting in trouble if you think, oh, we're just going to throw some punches. Sometimes you got to wrestle. Sometimes you got to jack his chin up with your forearm.
Yeah, you gotta know all the tricks, man.
Yeah. Do you have a wrestling background at all? Do you do any wrestling or?
I did half a season of wrestling in sophomore year.
Okay.
To keep up with football.
I mean, even that small amount probably helped you understand a foundation for boxing and the wrestling aspect of boxing, how it can really get gritty and you got to get down in your legs to be powerful.
Yeah. And that cardio wrestling, before that, I never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
I thought we ran a lot in football. I thought football was a good cardio, but that wrestling stuff, man, that's crazy.
Yeah, I tried out for wrestling in high school. I tried out. It was like 2-week tryout condition. They're just trying to kill you, chase you off.
Right.
And they put me on the B team, and I just walked away. I never went back. I regret that, but it was kind of being torn between lives at the time. I was like, as a parent, we try to keep our kids off of away from the bad crowd. I went to the bad crowd, at that time. But that was the first time I ever really worked out in my whole life, and it changed the way I thought about myself, and what I realized I was capable and not capable of doing. This is one of the greatest things about sports, martial arts in general. You really makes you have to be honest with yourself. You can't lie to yourself in boxing. You can't lie; it's going to get exposed.
Right. Get exposed, man.
It's an interesting balance. You got to have ego. You got to believe in yourself, but you got to be realistic too. You can't believe yourself into knocking the guy out.
Right.
You got to believe yourself into working out to prepare yourself to get in there and box well.
That's why I tell everybody at the gym, at my gym, it's like, this is where it starts.
Yeah.
You put the work here, you make it hard here. So when you do go out there, you're ready for whatever comes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it seems a little easier. And it's never easier. Fighting is hard, and especially in an actual fight. It's a lot harder than sparring. But, you put the work in the gym, and you go out there, and when it's time to do it, you already got it. It's muscle memory at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And things start locking in.
Yeah. So potential upcoming fights, you got both of them would be rematches.
Rematches, yeah.
Rematch from a loss, rematch from a draw. So it's potential redemption in both cases.
That's the key back.
That's great. And potentially fighting on big platform on the zone.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to just measure it out, weigh it out, and see what you get.
The waiting game as long as I can, but they're gonna start getting mad at me.
Well, let's wrap it up with a quick shout out. Why don't you just drop any of your sponsors or tell me about your merchandise, anything you want to say?
Shout out to Grunt Roofing and Solar. That's one of my main sponsors. I grew up with the owner, veteran owned. He was in the Army for a couple of years, and then he got discharged on disability. So shout out to him and his roofing company doing good things. Shout out to Fialo for all the boxing gear. It's
They're taking over, man.
yeah, some of the best stuff I've wore. So shout out to them, and shout out to my coaches for being there. Josh, Molly's gym, all the fighters here, they help me. All you guys help me all the time, and all my camps. Everybody who comes to spar, Mike, Art, my people at the gym, Emmanuel, Jabari. Shout out to my coaches, JC and Jermaine. And my brother, he's one of the biggest fans.
Yeah, I've always seen him in all your fights.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest fans. Believes in me, feel like he believes in me just as much as I believe in myself, sometimes more. So
It's powerful.
yeah, shout out to him and my wife. You know, I put her through the ringer, having to be in the gym all the time and
Yeah.
getting hit and stuff.
Yeah, being a boxer's wife ain't an easy task.
So you know, she came in, she knew what it was when we first met. You know, I told her it's more than a hobby. You know, this is career. Is what, you know. If I have a chance to work out, I'm gonna work out. You know, but so shout out to her for putting up with all that and my crankiness when I'm cutting weight and all the healthy meals or the no carb meals I have to make.
Yes, sir. No carbs.
Yeah. So shout out to them, man.
All right, man. Well, hey, how about we get you back here after this next fight and we talk a little bit more about boxing and get to know you a little bit more.
For sure, man.
All right, man. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, thanks for having me.